Good evening, everybody. How are you? This is Enrique of Spanish United. Today we have a very special guest tonight on the show. Would you be kind enough to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Hello, thank you for having me, Enrique. My name is Kostainine Anthony. I am the mayor of the city of Burbank in California.
Welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yes, I contacted you because I am interested in the city affairs of the city of Burbank in relations to Hispanic people. How is the city in terms of Hispanic inclusion, and how, as mayor, you see to improve the lives of the citizens of the city of Burbank?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a very large Hispanic population here in Burbank, and one of the key components of not just the work that I'm doing, but we as a city is doing outreach to communities that don't normally engage with our local government, with elected officials. How do we get folks who sort of have been, I want to say, looked over and maybe even forgotten for many decades, really involved in the local community? How do we build services for them? How do we get them to participate? I think that's a huge question being asked, not just in Burbank, but across the country, as we see more and more diaspora and immigration from around the world coming into the United States. I mean, at the end of the day, we're a country of immigrants, right? So why aren't we creating better access and better services for our, immigrant and second and third generation populations?
Yeah, that's very important, especially with Hispanic people who are the largest minority in the country, and yet we tend to be invisible when it comes to pretty much representation, even though we are in the economy, but we're not reaping the benefits as other people do. And one of the things that we do in Spanish United is to encourage and to emphasize the importance of Hispanic participation, not only in the economy, but in government, but also in a lot of community work. Like, one of the things that we do in Spanish United is that we are heavily involved in helping the homeless population, not just in Burbank, but in the surrounding areas. Like you said, people that have been overlooked and forgotten, and many of them are Hispanic, but we do help everyone of all groups. You don't have to be Hispanic to receive help from us, but we are involved in that because we feel that there are many people that, because of language barrier or not having transportation, many of them don't know how to get services. They don't know how to reach out to government agencies that could help them. So many of them have fallen through the cracks. And one of the things that me and my mother do in particularly is that we go directly on an individual basis out into the field. We do like an intake of what's going on with the people, and then we through donations, people bring food, water, supplies, and then we do referrals to people on how they could get them to get services. Because especially now with the economy, especially because of COVID, the Hispanic community was deeply affected because most of them cannot work remotely from home. They're essential workers, and many of them, for many reasons, they weren't able to work because many of them got sick, and then a lot of them became displaced. So I think it's very important that it has to be addressed, because homelessness is not a social issue, it's becoming a national security issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and people want to frame all of these issues, homelessness, job security, wages, childcare, schooling, as some new thing that's happened in the last generation or two. People forget that the way we talk about the Hispanic population, where we use it intertwined with immigration, is such a misnomer. Because, I mean, Burbank specifically, and most of California and the Southwest, used to be part of Mexico. I mean, there are Hispanic families in my city that have been here since the founding of Burbank as Burbank, and so we really need to realign our thinking on this. These homeless services, these schooling issues, these safety and public concern problems that people are talking about, we can't just divide people up and say, well, we need to change how we think because there's a new issue with a specific population. No, no. There has been issues for generations, and what we've failed to do is address them at the time. We could have
Mhm.
taken care of this decades ago and
Right.
had infrastructure in place, had the services in place, had people trained and ready to go. But there's this ignorance, this willful ignorance to say, and it's been true for many years, and it's not just Burbank, it's many
Right.
cities. These aren't our people. These aren't the people we're here to govern. These aren't the people we're here to protect. These aren't the people we're here to provide for. That
Right.
it's such a heartbreaking way of looking at the world.
Oh, of course. And not only that, but the thing that gets me is that people like to complain about the issue of poverty and homelessness, but yet they don't want to do anything about it. It's like, oh, I don't want to see it. It's an eyesore. I just can't stand it. But then when you ask them, okay, what are the solutions? Oh, it's not my problem. We cannot have this mentality. Oh, we complain about it, but we cannot say, oh, it's not our problem, because it's everybody's problem. Now it's becoming to the point where poverty and homelessness is not just subscribed to just one area. Now it's going to places where it didn't affect people and it's becoming a problem. But again, like you say, it has to do with ignorance. It has to do with people saying they're not our people, it's not our problem, but yet they don't want to do nothing to resolve it. So I think we need to come up with proactive solutions for long-term problems, because again, it's starting to affect everybody, and particularly like the Hispanic population. It does affect a lot because many of them don't have the education or the resources or the financial means to just get up and move somewhere. So there needs to
Absolutely.
be a social safety net for the people, because again, a lot of Hispanics are essential workers that serve the very people that don't even like them. So I think we need to
Yeah.
come up with ways to protect them, like the same way Black Lives Matter protects the Black people, the same way the Anti-Defamation League protects the Jewish population, other groups. Spanish United is here to protect the Hispanic population that really don't have a voice.
That's good. That's good. And these these issues that we talk about, the social services, the safety net, as you call it, there are so many people who want to simply label it as a welfare system, as a handout. And it is such a spurious tactic to call it that, because in the 1950s, when the federal government came in and helped white families purchase homes at lower rates and lower interest rates and down payments, nobody called that welfare. Nobody called that a handout. They called it investing in the future.
Right.
When there was college loans and Pell Grants, and all the kids who excelled well in the SATs from majority white zip codes, they got all this money to go to college, and nobody ever called it welfare. Nobody ever called it a handout at that time. And
Correct.
so the moment you start to change the demographics, the moment you start to address systemic issues, suddenly people come out of the woodwork saying, oh, well, we can't afford that, we can't pay for that, we're just giving money away.
Right.
Which is such a joke. It's such a joke.
Right. But people don't have a problem to open their checkbooks to send money to other parts of the world where there's wars that serve no purpose. But yet people don't want to put money in the infrastructure and social services and creating job placement programs. I've been throughout the United States. I've particularly to the Midwest. And I do have to say that if you want to talk about a society that's been left back, go to the Midwest and you will see that entire area that has become a wasteland. And those areas used to be productive parts of the country. That's where all the
Yeah.
manufacturing was. And these were
The
all
Rust Belt.
the Rust Belt. And these were predominantly Caucasian communities. There were no minorities in that time. And yet those areas have become poor. So I just think is that, when people don't invest in the community, they don't invest in the youth, they don't invest in education and skills, which are two essential things for people to survive.
Yeah.
People are not going to have a way to better themselves. And I think, like you said, it's very important that we cannot just because one group of people are Hispanic, for example, we should not invest in them. On the contrary, I feel that if people were to invest in them and invest in their education, it will serve as a deterrent to keep them away from gangs, keep them away from drugs, and keep them away from being massively incarcerated. Because after African Americans, Hispanics are the second largest incarcerated group in the entire United States. And the thing is that the United States only makes 5% of the world's population, but we have a quarter of the world's inmates population, more than communist China. Go figure.
And you know, all of these things are connected. We as a society, 50, 60 years ago, we allowed these big corporations to leave the productive centers of our country, and they took their jobs to the global south, as it's called, right? Lower wages, depressed wages, places where people can't join a union, where they can't go on strike. And a lot of these jobs went to Central and South America.
Right.
And they created a system where, you know, American companies benefited from the lower wages put upon and forced upon Hispanic communities way to the South. And then we wonder 30, 40, 50 years later, why these poor communities are so rife for war and famine and poverty. And then suddenly we have this huge influx of folks traveling north, coming here to find that wealth, the wealth that was taken from their community and brought to the United States. They're chasing the American dream. We told them to. And so if we don't address these bigger issues, if we don't create safety nets, create walls and barricades around the real problem people, I'm not talking about walls and barricades on our southern border. I'm talking about walls and barricades around our tax code, around the way corporations are run, around worker protections and workers' rights. These are huge issues that directly affect the Hispanic community because we're so connected on a continental divide. It's just so connected.
Right. I've had conversations with both people on the left, on the right, but particularly on the right. And I've told many, many times, most Hispanic people that are coming across the border, doesn't matter if they're coming legally or illegally. If you interview every single one of them, they will tell you they do not want to be in the United States. They are here because they're forced to be here, primarily because there's government corruption. They're fleeing from gangs, they're fleeing from violence, from drug cartels. There's no protections. And then they come into a country that doesn't welcome them, and they're treated very badly. And then those same people that come here as immigrants are the ones that become the same oppressors that they left back home. So I feel that, we need to understand that if most of these people could have the same standard of living as they do in the United States, they would not want to leave, because most people, if they could have a living wage, cover their basic necessities, and live in peace, they don't want to leave. Nobody wants to leave their home country. Nobody do. But unfortunately, because of circumstances, people are forced to leave their homes. So I don't think it's good, especially for people on the right that like to demonize Hispanic people, that they just want to come and take advantage and do things. And then they think it's okay to abuse Hispanic people. It's okay to mistreat them because they're stealing from us. They're doing harm to us. So it's okay to mistreat them.
Right. And you said it yourself, we send so much money overseas for war, but we don't send any money to build schools, to build hospitals. We don't build, roads and trains and infrastructure, power plants, aqueducts. That's not what we send our money. We write checks to play, kingmaker on the grand chessboard of the world stage. And it's so sad that that's where we are right now.
Yes. And I feel that organizations like myself is going to make a change, because I feel that if we educate the Hispanic population primarily in voting and doing community work and getting involved and do what they can for their own communities, they could make transformations. But again, they have to be empowered. And one of the things that I feel to be empowering is that to get people to vote, to get involved in community work, particularly for those that are vulnerable, like the homeless population and mentally ill people, etc. And at the same time, to be proactive in what they can do to make their livelihoods better. Another thing I was going to ask, Mayor, in the city of Burbank, I live in Glendale, but I go to Burbank a lot. What is the inclusion of Hispanics in terms of government, in terms of commerce in the city of Burbank?
So we're fortunate to have had a Hispanic elected council member in the city of Burbank for at least the last, I want to say 25 years. There has been at least one member, sometimes more, on our elected city council, which I think is really great because we have a very large Hispanic population. And we have many businesses owned and operated by Hispanic folks. And we pride ourselves in being able to integrate people from all backgrounds into our community and into our commerce. Hispanic, Asian American, Armenian, a lot of Black owned businesses too. And so we make sure to take those strides and to get people where they need to be, because like you said, sometimes there's language barrier, sometimes there's problems with visas and legal work, and how do we get people the right paperwork and filing the right forms and getting their taxes taken care of so that they can operate at a level that everybody else is at. So these are really key issues that, the city of Burbank, we do a lot of this as sort of part of our community outreach services. A lot of cities don't do this. A lot of cities just let the individual figure it out for themselves, or they have to find, free legal aid or free community organizations that do this work. But I'm so proud to live in a city that has such a caretaking mentality to get people productive. Again, it's not welfare, it's not a handout, it's getting people to work. It's getting people to school. It's about providing the services so that someone can be productive on their own and become whoever they want to be, right? That's the American dream.
Exactly. And again, it's not a sin to provide free services for people to have the tools to move themselves, because not everybody is wealthy. And again, like I've had many conversations with a lot of people. If most people could go to college for free or have services for free to have the tools to better themselves, they're going to take advantage of it. The reason why most people don't get an education is not because they're stupid or they're uneducated, is because they can't afford it. Like the United States, out of all the developed countries in the world, has the highest tuition rate, has the highest tuition rate for vocational school, and the highest medical expenses of the entire developed world.
Yep.
Like I was in Europe last year, and I had an injury where I injured my knee, and I was a tourist, and I even paid for insurance. But you know what? When I went to a hospital over there, it was quick. It was right away. The doctor came and looked at me and whatever, gave me some pills and whatever, and I was free to go. And they didn't give me a bill. And I was a foreigner. I wasn't even a citizen. They could have charged me if they wanted to, but they have a system where they have I don't want to call it socialized medicine, but let's just call it universal health care for the sake of argument, where everyone is covered. So yes, people pay taxes, and it may be a little bit expensive, but they don't have that headache. Like, God forbid if I get injured, or God forbid something happens to me, I don't have to go bankrupt, sell my house, or donate blood to pay my medical bills, because the number one cause of bankruptcy in the United States has to do because people cannot pay their medical bills.
Oh yeah, it's medical debt. Absolutely.
And I've seen a lot of people on the homeless because they cannot pay their medical debt. So I feel that if we find solutions to create services that people can pay out their taxes, but at the same time, people can have ways to better themselves in any way possible, let it be in business, let it be in education, that's gonna create people to work. Because again, a lot of people also are not able to work because a lot of people don't have the skills. Because today, to have a call today, a college degree is the equivalent of a high school degree 30, 40 years ago. So
Yeah,
many
it's the minimum.
places, yeah, the minimum. So many places, even if you're qualified to do a job based on a hands-on experience, if you don't have the college degree, they're not going to hire you. So a
Yeah.
lot of people are held back from getting a high paying job because they don't have the college degree. So I feel it's very important that we need to create a form of universal education where people can go to school, get the skills that they need, let it be in academics, let it be in vocational, where people can go into the workforce, because people need to work, and that create revenue. But again, if people don't have the skills or education, how are they going to get a paying job to contribute taxes into the economy?
And one of the things that I've seen happen over and over again is people fleeing war-torn countries, they're refugees, and they arrive here in the United States, and they were actually educated engineers,
Yes.
doctors, professors in their home country. They get
Yes.
here and their medical credits, their doctor credits, whatever it is, college credits don't transfer. So now they got to work a minimum wage job because they're not, quote unquote, qualified to do the job that they were doing back home.
Right.
And it's such a mess to try to clean that up and get people engaged with local colleges and find the credits. It's such a headache.
Yeah, it is. It is. And again, the only way that's going to change is that there needs to be ways for people to go to school and get educated and also learn the language. Because, like I said, to many people in the Hispanic community, um, un- if you want to better yourself in this country, unless you are doing something that doesn't really need language skills, you need to know English, because it is vital for one's progression for economic success. And I tell them, just because you learn English or speak English when you're doing business doesn't mean that you're abandoning your culture. On the contrary, you're embracing it. Because again, going back with the example of Europe, most Europeans speak more than one language. And they don't take it that, oh, this other country wants to push their culture onto me. On the contrary, because they have to deal business with everybody. So, I feel that if Hispanics, were to learn English and see it as opening doors, it will do a lot of benefit to them. So I think it's very vital that Hispanics learn English and learn the skills they can have a better future. And the third part of the question is, as a mayor of Burbank, how long have you been elected for? And as mayor, what would you do differently from your predecessor to make the city better and a better place for everyone to live in?
Yeah, so I was elected in November of 2020. I've served 2 years in my term. I have 2 years left. The job of mayor is actually rotating amongst the council members. So my election was for city council of Burbank. And once a year, the city council members decide which of them wants to be mayor for the next year. And so in December, I was chosen to be mayor for a year. So I've been mayor for just over 2 months,
Mhm.
and it's going really well. And for me, the biggest issues I see right now in the city of Burbank, for your listeners who don't know much
Mhm.
about Southern California, we have a huge housing crisis happening across LA County. And the prices are up, the housing is scarce, and we have a very, very aggravated, uh, unhoused situation happening where people are becoming homeless at higher rates than we've ever seen before historically. Um, my my campaign promise when I was running was to open the first year-round homeless shelter, emergency service homeless shelter in the city of Burbank. We've never had one. We send all of our folks to North Hollywood or Glendale, or to neighboring cities.
Mhm.
And I feel as though we are passing the buck. We are not taking care of people who were born and raised here, who
Mhm.
happen to lose their house here. And it's not North Hollywood or Glendale's job to take care of the unhoused populations of Burbank.
Correct. Correct.
So my big push, and I'm hopeful that it's going to be in the next year, we're going to open up our very first year-round homeless shelter.
Oh, that's awesome. And I also believe that if there are like sanitation crews that could also clean up in areas where there are I don't, I have never seen encampments in Burbank, but I know that outside
Mhm.
of
Well,
Burbank there are.
we do really well with our encampments. So one of the issues that we've seen in our neighboring city of Los Angeles, and this is something that they've been getting a lot of flack for,
Mhm,
is they will send sanitation crews without any warning, and
mhm,
they will send police to arrest folks who are stopping them, and they will simply clean up and throw away everyone's belongings, and power wash the street, and then
mhm.
call it a day, and then don't offer services to anybody.
Right.
um, Burbank does it the opposite. We spend days, if not weeks, ahead of time talking to individuals who are sleeping on the street or camped out on the street, and we try to get them into shelters, into
Mhm,
services. We have a lot of really great nonprofits in the area that take people in, find housing for them. Obviously, the one missing component is emergency housing. That's the homeless shelter I want to build. But we have
mhm.
so much of the wraparound services, so much of the outreach, and we have been doing that really well, even since before the pandemic. I would say since 2018, so that when we finally do clean up an area, it's because somebody has found a place to go and they're no longer there anymore, rather than simply cleaning it up to force the person to leave,
Right.
which sounds so counterintuitive to me. And in fact, we've been doing so well that this last year in 2022, Burbank was one of the few cities in LA County. There's 88 cities in LA County, and we were one of the very few to actually reduce our total homeless population numbers from the previous year. Everybody else's numbers went up.
Oh wow, that's really impressive.
Thank
And I think Burbank could be used as a model for other cities in the Los Angeles County on how to deal with homelessness a productive way. Because, like I said, I've been to Burbank many times. I work there. I do things there, and I don't really see homelessness there, even homeless people for that matter. But I think it has to, like you were saying, that the city has been doing well in resolving the issue of the unhoused, like
you.
unlike in Los Angeles, where, like you said, they just go up unannounced, they just clean up an area, remove the people, but then they don't really resolve it. It's like putting a band-aid on a tumor. It's like,
Exactly. Exactly.
if you don't resolve the tumor, that tumor will become cancerous and it will spread to the body. So you have to attack the tumor at its source. So I think the city of Burbank is doing a great job in that
And
aspect.
I personally, I'm really excited to try to bring the message of what Burbank is doing to the rest of LA County. And you didn't know this before I got onto the podcast today, but in a couple weeks, I'm actually going to be announcing my run for LA County Supervisor.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so that is a very big seat. There's 10 million people in LA County, and the fifth district where I'm running has 2 million constituents. And so what I'm going to try to do is bring what works in Burbank to the greater area. I'm really, thinking about what are the services we do well in Burbank? How do we take care of our populations in ways that are ignored by the rest of the county, and how do we fundamentally change that?
Awesome. I think you will do an excellent run as a representative for your constituents. I would love to see that, and I truly wish you the best.
Thank you. And that seat actually covers Burbank, Glendale, and Pasadena. So you'll see me on your ballot.
Oh, awesome. Perfect. I'll definitely keep an eye out for you. That's for sure.
Thank you.
So we've come to the end of our time. I wanted to tell you thank you so much for being on the show, Mayor. I truly appreciate it. As soon as I finish with the recording, I will email you and also text you the link, and you could share it to wherever you want to share it with. And also for your listeners and for the city of Burbank, if anyone wants to reach out to me. We are on social media. We are on Spanish United, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And if anyone in the city of Burbank wants to, work with me, or I could, be a speaker, or maybe give my suggestions on how Hispanic community could be more integrated, I'm definitely here to be of assistance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll definitely reach out. Thank you.
Have yourself a wonderful day, Mayor, and have yourself a good evening.
You too. Thank you, Enrique.
Bye bye.
Bye.